Where the once thriving Midwest metropolis, which gave birth to the nation's auto industry, is now filing for bankruptcy. It is the largest city to do so, but officials say there were no other options. The city owes $18 billion. Let's take a look.
America's Motor City is facing a dead end. The once prosperous Detroit has filed for bankruptcy, becoming the largest U.S. city in history to do so.
Today I authorize the emergency manager for the city of Detroit to seek federal bankruptcy protection.
Detroit lost 250,000 residents between 2000 and 2010. Today, the population struggles to stay above 700,000. The result is a metropolis where whole neighborhoods are practically deserted and basic services cut off in places.
This is a very difficult day for me, as I'm sure it is for a lot of our citizens here in the city of Detroit. You know, when I took office over 4 years ago, I said Detroit was in a financial crisis. And we tried to work our way through this situation over the last 4 years, but it's been very difficult.
Recently, auto companies began opening plants in other cities. The city's murder rate is at its highest in nearly 40 years. What does this mean for Detroit? The city's uncertain course could mean laying off municipal employees, selling off assets, raising fees, and scaling back basic services such as trash collection and snow plowing.
Well, to discuss this financial disaster for the Motor City, we welcome George Spadoro, former mayor of Edison, New Jersey, and welcome back Donald Tibbs from Drexel University. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us about this.
Thank you for having me back.
Well, let's talk about what this means for Detroit and its people. And you as a former mayor, if you can kind of give us a little outline for the layman who don't quite understand this, because I got to be perfectly frank, I don't quite understand it myself.
Yeah, many citizens don't realize that a municipal corporation can actually run into financial trouble and get to the point where they have to declare bankruptcy. And apparently in Detroit, that was the situation. The mayor described his concerns in shock, and it's an extraordinary challenge for the mayor of Detroit and also for the citizens.
Yeah, but $18 billion, didn't anybody see this coming? I mean, it's a pretty large number. We're not talking about $1 or $2 billion. We're talking about $18 billion.
You know, what happens with municipalities is they're able to borrow. So when you start having shortfalls, instead of saying we better cut back on our expenses, inevitably what happens is the desire to take care of your citizens forces you into the bond market. You borrow money, use some of that money to pay for expenses and some of it to take care of capital, but little by little you're building up a tremendous obligation. And in the case of Detroit, their revenues kept dropping, their expenses kept going up, and at some point the disaster happened.
Well, we're looking at a disaster. They're saying services may be cut, pensions, and all sorts of things. What are your thoughts on this, and how can the city even rebound after this?
It breaks my heart to see Detroit in this particular situation, this financial situation. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, so I've had an opportunity to see the city from when I was a young lad until the age that I am now. And to see the dilapidation that has occurred in the city, to see what has happened in terms of the services, to understand that there's been problems with this governmental infrastructure that dates all the way back to Mayor Coleman Young. To see all the things that have occurred in Detroit, it's really heartbreaking, and it's more than just, I think, a city, the historic aspect of a city filing for bankruptcy. This means devastation in some ways to the citizens who already live completely immiserated lives inside the city limits.
Well, I was out there, and I think it was 2006 or 7 when the Super Bowl was being held there.
That's right.
And the NFL was helping to revitalize
That's
a lot
right.
of the area and put in billions of dollars, and they thought that was going to be a great hope. But right now, I'll give you a couple of couple of statistics right here. The city's been named the most dangerous for more than 20 years.
Yes.
An estimated 40% of the city's streetlights don't work in the
Yes.
first quarter of this year.
Yes.
So again, where do they even begin to rectify the situation?
Well, you know, the challenge is going to be first deal with the immediate crisis, which is find the money to operate the city going forward without dramatically cutting services any further than they have been cut. But, you know, I look at this as an opportunity for Detroit. You know, the Ford Motor Company and General Motors, well, particularly General Motors, was able to go into bankruptcy, get rid of debt, and now they're a profit-making company again. And I think for the future of Detroit, they're going to have to now figure out a way to reduce their debts and get some of the obligations either eliminated or severely reduced, and maybe sell some assets, and then hopefully come back because the city has a future, I think, and this bankruptcy should be looked as an opportunity for them to develop that future.
Oh, it's a great city in terms of the ballparks all being right down there. I mean, just a wonderful area.
So that's a very interesting point. I think that one of the things the city has to focus on is bringing its economic base back. What happened to Detroit is what happened in many major cities during the 1970s on the back end of desegregation of the schools. Most of the citizens inside the city moved out into the suburbs, and the Detroit suburbs continued to grow, continued to profit. You know, one of the things that happened was all the sports teams moved out of the city of Detroit and out into the suburbs. So the Lions and the basketball team, the Pistons went to Pontiac, and then the Pistons moved to a different team. The only teams that really stayed were the Tigers and were the Red Wings. And so what has happened in a lot of major cities, even in New York City, Chicago, you can look at all of these major cities that have high majority African American populations. People are coming in from the suburbs back into the city, and we know that, and we understand it by its code name of gentrification. That's not happening in Detroit. No one's returning to Detroit, so that economic base is not coming back. And so the houses that go on the market can't be filled, and if the houses can't be filled, you lose quite a few assets in terms of the city being able to make money. People won't move back into the city because, for example, it takes the police almost an hour to respond to a call. You call the police and say, hey, there's my house was just robbed. They will answer you on the phone and say, well, is the burglar still there?
Yes.
And if not, then we're not on our way right now. So that's really deeply problematic, and no one wants to move. People move in and out of cities and in and out of neighborhoods for one main reason, that is safety. And so if they feel that the city is unsafe, if it has its reputation, if its infrastructure in relation to its safety services won't provide them what they need, people won't come back.
And I can tell you, just we took a ride along with some of the police officers through some of those city streets, and you saw dogs roaming the streets.
Scary.
It was just heartbreaking. So the question I have now is, was this bankruptcy necessary for the city of Detroit?
My guess is this is such an extreme act. It wouldn't have been taken unless they had to take it. And what it basically means is that there came a day where the mayor and the appointed individual who was administrating the city looked in their bank account and didn't have enough money to pay their bills. And if you don't have enough money to pay your bills, you've got to declare bankruptcy, because what happens now is the second you declare bankruptcy, you don't have to pay interest on any of your debts. And you're allowed now to take care of your most immediate expenses. And so to keep the city alive, they probably took this action.
Now, a recent article, though, in the Financial Times, and I'll counter that with, they described Detroit as a city in the midst of a mini boom.
Yeah.
But the governor right now is defending these actions, saying there was just no other way. Now the judge this week on Monday is supposed to rule this week whether this bankruptcy filing violates Michigan's constitution.
Right.
What?
Well, it's a complex question. It is clear that a municipality can file bankruptcy in the United States because they have. But the question of whether in Michigan this bankruptcy is going to be able to deal with the largest segment of the debt, which is the obligation to public employees in terms of pensions, is the real question. And the inability to deal with that is going to be a tremendous challenge for the city of Detroit. In order to come out of this bankruptcy, they're going to have to figure out a way to reduce their ongoing obligations to retirees and other members of the pension fund in a way that balances their interests and the interests of the current employees in the city and the citizens of the city. That's going to be a big challenge, and it's unclear whether they can do it.
Yeah, I was reading some story about an officer who just retired after 36 years, and he said, I don't know if I'm going to have a pension.
This mini boom question, I think, is a very important one, and I think you hit on it a few moments ago, right? One of the things that I was speaking about was all of the sports teams moving out of the city. Now they've all come back in, right? And so Detroit hosts the Super Bowl. The Tigers are downtown. The Lions are downtown. I think one of the things that Detroit has to do is it has to reckon with its long past in relationship with the auto industry. The auto industry has essentially failed Detroit, it's bailed on Detroit, and it hasn't at the same time allowed any other industry to come into the city in major ways. Detroit is a port city. On the other side of the river is another country, it's Canada, right? How is it that this city does not have some of the import and export business that would be related, or you would see in any other city that has such a close proximity to another country? Part of that has been because the auto industry has dominated Detroit for at least the last 40 or 50 years in the post-Second World War.
Well, George Spadoro and Professor Tibbs, we thank you so much for joining us here on Fresh Outlook. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And as always, an exciting show, and we thank our entire panel and for sharing their insights, and we thank you for sharing your time with us, and thank you for joining us again on Fresh Outlook. I'm Mia Toschi. Enjoy the final week in July. Hopefully some of you are taking some time off, and we'll see you back here next week.